Welcome. So as you can see here, we are going to be going through quite a few shapes here of the digital kind. And obviously I can't create every single digital shape. I'll try to get the most common ones. The idea for this video is to understand how to break down the shape and create it using the techniques I show you. Also, if you haven't watched it already, I would recommend watching my designing basic shapes video. I might even pin it to the comments. I don't know. So, with all that preamble out of the way, let us begin. So, I want to start with let's start with the shape node, and what I'm doing here is creating the backdrop of like an icon, for example, right? And one way to do that is to create the shape you want, and to soften the corners, we'll blur it and then we'll run it through a histogram scan, match the contrast, right? Now you have access to that or easier threshold. Boom, done. We have a rounded cube. The other way to do it is to create another shape node, but this time we'll use a disk, and this will be the size of the corner. So we'll add an extend shape. As you can see, we've extended it horizontally, and then we'll add an extend shape again. And this time we will rotate that to 90 degrees. And we have just also created a rounded square. So if we click between two of these, you can see the quality is basically identical. The size is not, quite exact, but you can see we both get the same result. I prefer the bottom one, but the top one is, you can use this to soften almost any shape, so that's nice. So now that we have that out of the way, feel free to add something to this if you want later. I'm just showing you how to make it. I don't actually add it in until later, but you can add whatever shape you want or subtract to get that cool like icon background. So let us create a cursor for the first shape. So we start with the shape node, and I'm going to use this as the, so bring it in like this. This will be the stalk or the shaft or whatever you want to call it for the cursor. And let's also add the polygon, which will be the arrowhead. It is a triangle, as we know. So we'll rotate that 90 degrees and scale it in. Yeah, that's pretty good. So let us combine these with the blend node. Doesn't matter the order. Let's do a max. And we will have to transform this. So add a transformation 2D. Double click that so we can see. And just bring this down. Now I do like it to be a bit more chunky, so yes, good. So now we have a cursor. So from here you can actually run an edge detect. Let's just get all in frame. Take out the roundness because we don't want that, and you can invert it to get it back on the black background. So just like that, pretty easy, pretty simple. We have a cursor. Of course, you can transform it and rotate it to give it that like cursor feel. Yeah, it's cursor. And we can also change the under part of the pointer. And what I'm saying is, let's add a shape here. Some of them usually have a curve underneath to give it like that pointed arch to the arrowhead. So let's create a disk quickly. Oops. Make it kind of an ellipse here. We're going to make some room here so that we can add in a blend here and subtract it. So let's subtract, and we want to bring this down. Good. So let's bring this to focus, and when we bring this down, you can see we're making that curve. Now when we go down the chain, you can see it's curved. Boom, boom. And now it looks more like the cursor we all enjoy and love, whatever. So if I plug in, you can see the regular, whoops, the regular cursor and then the curved. So that's the cursor, how to create the cursor symbol. Let's move on to the next shape. So continuing with the arrow idea, we're going to create the refresh icon. So that arrow that goes around in a circle on web pages and stuff. So let's start with another polygon. 3 sides. Let's rotate that. So we got it pointing up. This will become the arrowhead, of course. And we want to skew this. So let's click center so that it skews from the middle. Without that, it will just slide, right? So let's choose center here. And we want it so that that right edge is straight. Good, close enough. So the next thing we'll do now is create the half circle, you know, the circle that goes around. So let's use the circular, the splatter circular. And we're gonna change this to disk so it's flat and not with a gradient. And we're going to crank this, right? So we can create a smooth circle. Let's crank that up to 256. It seems crazy, but it doesn't impact the cook time or whatever you want to call it. So let's adjust the radius a little here and the size, the scale. That looks pretty good. Now let us reduce the spread, and that will bring it in so that it's not rotating fully. Nice. So let's blend these. Sometimes I like to blend early so I can see what I'm doing as I go down the chain. They're not ready to blend, but it helps me. So I do want to transform this so that, let's double click that, so that it lines up. Now I'm gonna eyeball this. You can obviously dial in the numbers yourself. And we also want to change the size of this. It's a bit too crazy. So let's change that. Honestly, it's low-key finished. Like, that's it, right? I think I will adjust this so that it makes a bit more sense. So let's do it about there and then rotate it. Oh, whoops. Nice. Bam, that's the refresh symbol. Very simple, very clean, very easy. Now, I would like to do the other symbol where you have the pointed arrow, which are 2 lines as opposed to a triangle. So let's make that quickly. And what we'll want to do is to use the trick we used earlier. So let's make some room and create a disk first. Let's create a disk, bring that down, right? And extend that. So we're making like a line. Then we would like to transform this. Let's rotate it. Let's say 45 degrees. And then mirror. So what I've done here is created a point, right? Of course, the transformation, let's just make that a little smaller to avoid the tiling. Good. And now if we look at the locations of 2 of these, we can probably just slot this in here. Let's see how it looks. Ah, yes, of course, it hasn't been rotated. So we can't just use this. We can duplicate it and see if that helps us. So duplicating it allows it to steal the location, right? So we've copied this location and all we have to do is rotate it to suit. So I'll plug this in. Let's double click that to see what we're doing. And let's rotate this. Actually, we'll adjust it just a little bit. Actually, no. Let us rotate the splatter circular so that the arrows kind of stay the same. Good. So now we can rotate this and then adjust the extend. It's a bit crazy. Let's do it like that. And then of course, changing this to not tile. Absolute no tiling. So now we have 2 options. If we keep it like that, we have, sorry, we can plug this in here and we have that arrowhead, or we can plug this in and have this arrowhead. So that's kind of cool. What I'll do next is I will take this and create the other refresh symbol, the one that uses two arrows following each other. Since we've done a good chunk of the work already, we can actually use what we've done to create that icon. So I'll duplicate this splatter circular, duplicate that, and I'll create a smaller, actually I'll duplicate two of these because they're already plugged in, and I'll create a smaller circle here. Let's reduce the spread, something like that. And when we rotate it, let's come down here. Yes, right. Now we are able to transform this and then blend it together. So if we do a transformation 2D, blend, whoops, and let's change this to max. Now with this focus, we'll click the transform 2D and rotate this, and just like that, we have the other refresh symbol. And because we've set this up to work with both heads, we can actually just hold shift and move that to this, and now we have the other one with the straight arrowhead, the triangular one. Again, this arrowhead isn't lined up perfectly. Something like that is actually better. Anyway, doesn't matter. So that is the refresh symbol. A few more nodes than the last one, but pretty straightforward, pretty easy. And I think with that, we can move on to the net symbol. So let's finish off the arrow set with the share icon. So you guessed it, we'll start with the polygon, 3 sides, bring it in. We'll do a 180 on this, so that's pointing that direction. And what I'll do is skew it again from the center, maybe that much, and then we will mirror it vertically. So I'm creating a pointing arrow that direction. Now for the curve, actually let's transform it to the right. So let's add a transformation 2D, move it over somewhere around there, and bring it in a little. Yeah, so for the spline, well, I just spoiled it. We're gonna use a spline for the curved part of the share button. So with the spline quadratic, you can use another spline, but this has 3 points, which makes it so much easier to manipulate and makes it easier to like not have to think, I guess. So we'll want to attach a render to this spline render. If you don't have the 3 cards, then if you go to the top toolbar, you'll see standard, and that's probably what you have it set to, right? But you can press 2, or you can go up here and click it. So if you press 2, it changes, and then you can drag in all the wires at once, and it's very nice. So let us blend these so we can see what we're doing. Just good. See, it's not aligned. So with this in focus, we can click back here and just, adjust this to suit. It looks kind of bad, but that's because we haven't enabled thickness. So if we see here in the thickness section, we can change the start thickness. Oh, sorry. Let's double click this, I think, so we can see. Oh, sorry. Show thickness envelope is what was not enabled. Good. So now you can start to see what's happening. So let's double click. Now it won't update here because we haven't told the render to show it. So if we click the spline render, we have to also enable the thickness there. And there are 2 ways to do it. You can enable the envelope amount. That's the first step rather. And just crank this up like crazy. That's one. Or you can crank it up a little bit and then increase the thickness, right? This one is ideal if you don't fully care about the sharpness of the accuracy. because it's just making them thicker, as you can see. So they're gonna overlap and bleed in, and it might not be what you want. So that's why increasing the amount actually increases the accuracy a lot better. And either one does not affect the CPU time. So you're kind of good with either. Well, it affects them, but just not a lot. So let's click this and go back to the quadratic, and we kind of have what we wanted, right? I can't remember what the share icon looks like. I'll put it on the screen. But yeah, this is good. Now let's adjust the end thickness a little. And boom, just like that, we have the icon. So I'll leave that there for the arrow symbols, and let's move on to the net symbol. And that is going to be the home icon. That is incredibly popular with either websites or phones or whatever. So let's choose the polygon, and we all know that is a triangle rotated 90 degrees because the top of the home is like a triangle, the roof, right? It's a bit too vertical, so I'm going to use a transformation node to just squash that in a little bit. I think let's keep it there. I'm going to remove the tiling, so let's put it about there. We can change this later, and then we'll add an extend shape grayscale and rotate that as well 90 degrees. Now it helps to turn on show helper so we can see, wow, it's not touching the object. That's why nothing is happening. We'll also want to extrude this in one direction, right? So now if we change the extrude position, you can see what we want. So we just want to shave the bottom. So that's about 0.065 or something like that. Maybe 6.8. Okay, so we found the value that we want. We found it, and then we can reduce the amount of extrusion. So let's just turn that off. And now we have the base of the home. To create the door, I guess is what that would be. Create a disk, and we'll do the same thing. Which, let's see if we can copy this and make that work for us. Now, the reason this didn't work is it's pulling from a different location. So copying these, it's not a bad idea, but we want it to slice the circle in the exact middle. So I just like to create it from scratch. That way I know it's perfectly centered. So let's do a 90 and one direction, and then reduce that. Now let us subtract. So this will be subtracted from this. That's why it has primary, because the middle input is the thing that will be subtracted. So let's click subtract. Subtracted from, sorry. And there we have it, the house icon. It looks a little weird, so let's bring that in a little. Okay, that looks more like it. So that's the net symbol we were doing. So let's move on to some really nice, fun, quick ones. So I'll start with a bookmark, and that will be also pretty straightforward. So let's create a square this time. You know what? Let's keep it at 1 and then bring this in ourselves. So something like that. And let's just duplicate this from up here so we don't reinvent the wheel. Let's transform this. We're going to bring this down. And then let us subtract. A lot of these shapes are incredibly straightforward. So as you can see, if we click that, we can adjust that. And that is the bookmark. Pretty easy. Pretty easy. So the net symbol is the power icon. Let's use a circular splatter circular. Change that to, what's this? Disk. Crank these up as always. And actually let's duplicate this here. There's so many ways to make this. But I figured I would show you using this bottom part. We can actually plug this into to be the background, right? So if we double click that, that will be there always. So now if we try to match the thickness and then reduce the spread, we can actually rotate that and we have the power icon. Yes, it is upside down, but an easy way to change that, let's set this to -90, would be to go to this and set this to -90. So it's pointing the right direction. So we can actually create the line just with the splatter circular. So if we crank up the pattern, change it to disk, we can bring down the spread and increase the spiral factor, because it's spiraling, but it's not twisting. So it's just going straight out, in case you, right? So we can also use this to create this and replace these two nodes with just one. So let's do that here. Take that out. So we just have two nodes, plug this in the background. And then because the splatter circular is so cool, we can just rotate this ourselves and extend it with the radius. It looks kind of hilarious, but so we have the similar result with just two nodes. So those are two ways to do that. I like doing it this way or even this way because it avoids having to use a blend node, right? You just slap this in the background and you can skip an extra node. Whereas with these, you have to use a blend node to add them together or to combine them. So speaking of splatter circular, let's use it again for the search icon, which is just a magnifying glass. So let's set that to, I guess, 128, because we might not need as much samples because it's going to be a straight line. So let us do what we said we do here. Let's increase that a little bit and let's bring down the scale. This is going to be the handle for the spiral, for the magnifying glass. So let's set that angle to 45 degrees. And the best thing about this is you can offset the location. So if we go in the position section, you can actually move this where you want it to go, and you don't need a damn transformation node. So let's plug this into another splatter circular and do what we do best. As you can see, you already see it happening, right? So we can set this to 256 and set this to a disk. Oops. And, you know, obviously adjust it to suit what we want. We can also go back here. Actually, that's kind of crazy. That's kind of big. Let's reduce the radius here. Something like that. So we can go back to the first one and then adjust it. Boom, we have the search icon magnifying glass. Two nodes. Beautiful work. So very happy with these. Very lightweight, very easy. And we can move on to the net symbol. So I know I love the splatter circular, so why hide it from you? I'm going to use it again. So for this one, we're going to create that settings icon, like the three lines with the like adjustable lines. So we'll change this to a square and then we'll reduce the pattern amount to 1. And now we have a square, but we actually have full control. We can offset it without a transformation node. It's beautiful. So let us increase the height a little. Actually, let's do this first. Right now, let us offset that and something like that. Yeah, that's good enough. So we have this. Let's create another. Let's duplicate this because I'm lazy. Actually, let's create a new one. It won't take long. Change the pattern amount to 1 and set it to square. Boom. The cool thing is, as you know, you can plug this in to be the background. So now we have two nodes and they're combined. So we can increase the size, whoops, of this, right? It's not the X technically, but it's rotated. It's a bit confusing. So now we have the first meter. This is the first thing in the settings, and we can just drop this into a tile, any, you know, tile sampler, tile generator, I'm just using this because it's visually simpler. And we can change this to image input. And I like to use absolute for the scale. And let's just change this 0 in X and 3 in Y. And then scale it up to suit. Let's do 6 or something. 8. Yeah, good. Oh, 10. So now that we have this, we can actually just offset the symmetry so that one is flipped. So we can change this to horizontal only because vertical won't make a difference. And we can change symmetry random. Usually it is the middle one that's different. So we can actually go to the base parameters and change the seed till we get that. Boom. No, no, we're done. Yeah, it's not the most predictable way to do it, but this is the settings icon, right? Like if we wanted to soften this so it looks like, I don't know, Apple or something, we can blur that and then scan it, or yeah, scan it. Boom. So I've softened it a bit too much, right? But you can, you know, boom, yay, settings. So we have that symbol finished, and it's pretty straightforward, especially if you don't want to blur it. To soften it, it's even simpler. So let's move on to the net symbol. So the net symbol I want to do is the cloud, and I'll show you 2 ways to do it. I'll just go through them since we've used all these tools already. So I will talk as I do it, but okay, so we got the disk circle. I want to extend that. Done. And then we will transform, make that, I don't know. Ooh, that's pretty big. A little bigger. And then we'll transform it smaller. It'll all make sense. And then we will blend this with this one. So let us do that. And then we'll do the same thing. Really. Blend this with that. Double click this and we can now edit these as we see fit. I do believe this is extended a bit too much, so let's do that. And make this a little bigger. Nice. Yeah, wow, done. That is a cloud icon. What service? I don't know, but this is a cloud icon and you have full control in editing it as you see fit. Oops. Done. So that's the first way. Second way, especially to cut out all of these blends and transforms, is, you guessed it, splatter circular. So we'll do what we do best. Use a disk. Oops, reduce that spread. Increase the spiral factor and make this a little bigger. We'll offset this and we'll actually make this a bit longer. Yeah, something like that. So now we can put that into another splatter circular and can reduce that just to flat, make it pretty big, actually 4. And the only sad part is we have to adjust this with what do you call it, sliders. There's nothing you can click and drag, as far as I know, at least, that will allow you to just do it that way, right? So drag that in, one more circular, and this time one. This, I should have really just duplicated it, if we're being honest, just so I can see what I'm doing. And then we can, oops, you can adjust it that way. So it depends on your needs, but that is the second way to do it. We have 3 nodes totaling less than 2 milliseconds, and then we have 6 nodes totaling less than 1 millisecond. That's kind of crazy. So you know, it's up to you. Visual simplicity or efficiency. Both are ridiculously fast anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But these are the two ways, and then this one isn't as center as the other. So, but two ways to do the cloud icon. So let's move on to the next set of icons, which will be messaging. So let's create a shape here. We're going to use a square this time. Well, technically a rectangle, but I mean a square default. Then we'll add a polygon for the triangle. Let us bring down the scale a bit, and we will combine these. So blend, combine. You can add our mats, up to you, and then we will transform. Double click that to see. Click, yes. So now if I adjust that, boom, we have the messaging icon. Ain't that sweet? We can hold control to change that, like the angle of that. Or I know some icons have a offset, so it's like this, I guess. So that's also a messaging icon. Anyway, you'll figure that out on your own. The other one is the ellipse one. So let's duplicate this since it's the right size. Change this to a disk. Well, that really is the right size. That's crazy. You know what? Let's just duplicate all of this at this point. Let's change this to the disk. Double click and boom. I'm just kidding. This isn't exactly what I had in mind. So let's rotate this 180 to the other side, and then let's move this kind of where we want it to be. Bam. This is what I was thinking. So those are the two messaging icons. Very simple, very lightweight. 4 nodes each, and wow, that was really fast. So for the next one, I would like to do more messaging, but the longer version, which is email. So let's actually duplicate this and this, because we do need a rectangle for email. And we'll actually have this pointing down. So let's do 90, minus 90. Double click, yes. And this one is a lot more fun. Like, I had a lot of fun doing this. But I would like to transform this and squash it a little. Yeah. Good. And we're gonna lift this up. Or is it down? Actually, it doesn't matter. Let's lift this up. And we want to remove tiling, of course. So let's click that, remove the tiling, and we will duplicate this for the underside, you know, right? Rotate this, and this will be the underside of the email. You'll see, it'll make sense. So let us blend these so we can start to see what the hell we're doing. We want to blend these together first. Let's do a matte for now, and then blend this with that. Let's do another matte. So double click, and now we have a mess. The problem with this is, if we were to, even if we line this up appropriately, right, have it, giving it that email look, it's going to be invisible because everything is white. So in order to see both and not have them blend into to each other, we'll have to reduce the opacity of the blend node. That way we get a gray value for this one, because this is the one being, you know, put in. All right, so now we can see the overlap. Of course, you can switch this if you want it the other way, but no email symbol looks like that. I think this is the direction. So now we have this, we can drop it onto here and subtract it. Because these values are not fully this one, they won't subtract the whole part of the rectangle, and we'll get another gray value. So if we click subtract, you can see what's happening. This is full white, so it's subtracting the entire thing, which we'll fix later. And this is half. This is 0.5 half gray, and it's subtracting half gray from full white, which is half gray. I'm sorry about the math, but that is what it's doing. So now we can actually go back here and increase the scale to to suit our needs, and then adjust the location of these things. That looks good. This can come down a bit more. Actually, this should be, anyway, it doesn't have to be perfect. Now, we don't want it to fully delete it, so we'll have to reduce the opacity here as well. And this is where the magic happens, right? Because if we leave this full and then we run an edge detect, what will happen is it won't find the edges. This basically looks at the difference in values, and there's no difference here. It's just all black. So that's why when we start to introduce the gray, it will find the edge, and thus we will have our email sign. So let's invert that. And there's also another way to get the, if we want the negative space to be black and the other part to be filled in. So let's do those variations. So we have the white lines. Let's leave it there. The black lines on white background. And then let's duplicate this. Sorry. Let's plug this into a blend, and we will blend this with the original. So let's tap Alt so that we have a nice little thing here, and plug that in. And when we click multiply, it will, it's this that I want to plug in, right? It will limit the square, sorry, it will limit the email sign we have here to the contents of this, right? So multiply white and black on top, and it will, as a result, isolate the fill. So then we get this effect. So you have a lot of ways to get the symbol that you want here with the email, but I think that's gone on long enough. We can continue to the next symbol. Yeah, so that is the email sign. It doesn't look really nice. I already have one I did before, and that looks, oh my god, that looks so much better. But anyway, continuing with the video, I do want to go a bit faster because there are a lot of other symbols I would like to go through in this video. And it doesn't make sense constantly saying we're going to use a polygon, we're going to use a shape. Let's just do that, and I will explain what I'm doing, but I will skip over that part since we've done it 1,000 times. So let's carry on. So for the net shape, I'll be creating the like notification icon, I guess. So I've pasted in what we did at the beginning of this video. So let's just adjust the vertical amount here because it's kind of like horizontal, I guess, and reduce the size of the edges here a little. And I'm gonna duplicate a triangle I made earlier that I moved downward and squished. Nothing secretive here. Let's blend this together, and boom, we have that icon, right? Boom, boom, boom. You know what, you know the drill. And in my first video, I showed you how to create a heart, my first designer shape video. So let's copy in that heart that we created. Let's duplicate. And as you can see, it's just a shape, extended, rotated, and then mirrored. Beautiful, for those who didn't watch that video. So if we combine these, let's do a blend here. Let's subtract. Obviously this is too big, so let's bring that in a little. And bring this down a little. Oh shoot. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Let's bring it down this way. Yeah. So now we have a heart emoji. A heart notification, like maybe somebody liked this video. And we want to add some color. This is actually surprisingly easy because all we have to do is change the opacity once again so that we get another value here. Let's do 0.5. Doesn't matter. It just has to be not fully black or not fully white. The thing about this is you obviously want color. So there's more than one way to do this. And the fastest way is to add a gradient map, right? If we add a gradient map, we can then go to the gradient editor. I'll set this to no interpolation. You'll see why. And then we can click and set this to, I don't know, white, and then set this to, again, I don't know, a notification color. So yeah, that's the fastest way. And as you can see, there's this like rough edge on the side here, and that's from the aliasing where there are in between values, right? So really and truly, you'd have to go in here and then bring this in to tighten that really close. I mean, you can get really close, but it won't be perfect. So the other way, or you can mess it up like that. The other way is to introduce the color earlier, which is the better way, really. So if we push this down a bit, we can actually introduce color here. And to do that here, we can add a blend. So let's add a blend in here. And then we actually want this to be converted to color. So we can use a gradient map again. Leave it unedited, so it just changes to color. And sorry, I don't want to mess up what we already have. So we have this, and then we can add the color we want. So we can say uniform color, let's say, you know, something. So let's double click that. And we want to use the original as the mask. And now it has the aliasing, like everything is there fully color. Obviously, we can apply that to another blend to bring in the heart. Right, so this is a bit more nodes. Of course, we need a gradient map to convert it. Plug that in, and now, sorry, we can either add our mats, I believe. Yeah, so now we have, and then, you know, like this is also aliased before. So now we have this combined. And of course, just like we did here, if we wanted a color for the heart, a separate color, we can run that through another blend. Let's duplicate that, for example, right? And use this as the mask. You can't use this because this is color, right? So you use this as the mask. And now if you double click that, this heart now has a color that you can control at any time. If you go here, let's use copy. And we'll also need the mask because we're copying. What's happening here is I had it set to max, so it's just using the values and it's not actually using the color. Same with add. But if you want to keep the color, obviously, you'll just use copy like a default blend mode and use this to say, hey, copy this heart only where the white values are. And then you can copy it on. So now it's crispy, all the colors you want. It's just a bunch of nodes. And I decided to add this screenshot here to show you what the simplest version of adding color could be. So that's how you can add color to basically any of the shapes I've shown you so far in, you know, in different ways. So use that knowledge to add the color to the symbols that you desire. So let's move on to the rest of the symbols. Let's create the link icon. So I'm gonna create copy a splatter circular we used earlier for the arrow, the refresh arrow. I just made it a little smaller, so you know, nothing crazy. Made it a little smaller, and then we're going to extend this. So extend, and then drop this in another splatter circular. Drop it in the actual pattern input this time. So let's change pattern amount to 2, change this to input and scale this up. And that is some pretty simple settings. So let's click this. We will reduce the radius to 0 and then offset it along, well, the other direction, negative. So let's send that about here, I guess. And let's reduce this extension. It's a bit much. And yeah, I'll set that. And we have the link icon. Boom. That's a link. Let's do it another way. Smooth that. Let's copy what we have made already, which is a half circle on the using a splatter circular. All I did here was offset it, as you can see. It's a half circle. And then we took a circle and extended it. So let's also extend this. Let's turn on the helper so we can see. That's kind of nice. So good. Turn that off. And let's combine. Actually, let's mirror this first. No, that's nice. And let's combine them. Boom, that's another link. So let's do it the last and final way. And I know these are different designs, so there's different link. Let's do the last one, the longest one, the final link, as it were. So I'm going to duplicate some shapes that you've seen 1,000 times, just to this kind of extend shape. And we want to edge detect this. Let us invert. We don't need roundness. Let's set it to 6. That works. And I'm gonna transform this. So let's put this here. I'll transform it again. And let's put this here roughly. I need to blend these so I can see what I'm doing. So let us mask. Okay. Oh, that was actually pretty good. So of course we need the overlapping effect where one chain goes over the other and it goes under the other. So I'm pretty sure you've seen a chain link before, or a link icon. So to do that, we'll need a thicker version of each of these to cut away from the other, basically a stroke to create that negative space. So to do that, we are going to edge detect again. So let's use this. Let's just duplicate that. Drop this in here. Oops. Duplicate it again. So now we have edge detects on the edge detect. So it's thicker. So what we'll do next is to blend these together. Now the reason I'm doing that is so that we get the combination of both, right? So if I take 2 of these and we use multiply, we'll get the intersection. So these are the things we want to cut out. So if I click this, you can tell that is this overlap, and the other one is that overlap. And these are the things we want to get rid of on each link. All right. So let's just zoom out here. So let's bring this across. Let's make some more space so we can understand what is happening a bit better. So we'll add a blend node, right, on the way to that. And we'll add another blend node on the way to that. So these nodes are going to be responsible for this getting cut. As I said, this needs to get cut by this. So it'll make sense in a second. So if I send this here and choose subtract, double click, you can see it's getting taken out on both sides of the entire link. All right. If you look here and look here, you can see that's the part that's getting eat out. So if we go here, we'll see that. And if we send this here as well and subtract that, we'll see it's getting taken out from both sides. Now there's an easy fix to this, of course, and that is to take this and cut this in half, right, for each of them, so that it doesn't cut both but cuts one. And there's actually a faster way to do that. In the blend node itself, you can crop the blend. So instead of using both of these, we can go to this and say, hey, bring in that left side. Whoops. And now we've cut, we are only cutting this part of the link. So if we go here, you can see this area is now looking nice, right? It's going under because it's getting cut. And we can go here and bring in the right side. Say, hey, only cut that. Now when we go here, it only cuts that. Sorry, this. And you get the overlapping effect with as little nodes as possible. And yeah, and that's actually it. I had made a more complex version of this, but I thought I'd simplify it so that, you know, you get the most efficient setup as we are doing in these videos. So the good thing about this is we can go back here and move this around. Now you can't move it all the way around, of course, because it's gonna break, but you can get quite a lot of variation from it. And if you wanted to, you can like put it here and then adjust the cut, right? You see, just to get even more out of it. So a lot of flexibility with this hyperlink setup. And then you can of course go to the edge detect and change the thickness of the chain link. So that's the third and final link. And speaking of links, the next symbol will be a web icon or web browser or whatever. So, you know, two shapes, one circle, one ellipse, and we are going to subtract this from the other. Subtract. Now we have this shape, and I'm going to create a splatter circular because I want a very thin cross. So let's change this to square. Set that to 2. So drop that radius and increase the, yeah, let's go with that. And actually let's set this to 1 and increase and add a ring because I want to rotate the ring. Ring rotate offset. Good. Now we have one node and a nice plus sign. All right, so before we blend these together, I do want to go forward and show you how this is all going to work. So let's add an edge detect. Let's reduce this. So this will be the outer, let's invert that. This will be the vertical circles for the web browser, you know, situation. And the reason I did it like this is because if we were to go here and we change this to copy and then bring down the opacity so that there are more than one value instead of just one, it will find the edges. So whatever way you like, you can choose, but I was just choosing subtract for ease so I can see it easily. And now we're going to use rotate here, transform, and we're going to rotate this and bring it down and then mirror. This will be used, mirror vertically, invert. This will be used to add the curve you see at the top and the bottom of the web browser icon. So let's blend this on here as well. So we can use whatever technique we want. If I go in here and double click that, you can see them appearing there, but of course we don't want the outside, so we'll use this to tell us to limit it, to mask it within here. And then you can see, because this is cut already, we should probably use this instead. Now we have the full circle here. Let's hold Alt, make that clear. So now we have this and all these shapes we need to create that part. The only thing missing is the plus. So let's blend that into this. Blend that in earlier in the process is what I'm saying. So add that, and we can matte, lighten, copy. It doesn't really matter. So if we go here, you'll see that it's thick because this already has an edge, so it's adding an edge on top of it and making it thicker. So I'll just click this and reduce the X till it's like super thin, 0.001. Yeah, so now it's roughly the same size as everything else, and all that is left is to change this from matte to anything else that we can change the values to, right? Even this could work. And we want to limit this as well to here, limit it within. So now we have a globe. And again, this isn't the only way to make the globe icon, but it's like one of the simplest, as you can see. So you can invert it. Pretty cool. Let's move on to the next symbol. We're going to be doing a padlock. So I've duplicated some shapes that we've already used in this video. Shape, disk, extend, extend. So we're actually going to combine these. And as you can see here, they're kind of offset. So let's actually transform this and bring this down. That looks like a padlock. Let's do that. Good. And from here, we can edge detect. If we invert that, cut out that roundness, you can see we don't have that line, and we've just learned cool ways to differentiate the edges. All we have to do is make a different value. Now we have the line and we have created a padlock. So let's do this in a different way, like a sharper way. And here I have created some things that look all too familiar. So splatter circular half, and then we extended it and moved it up. Just the shape, I moved it down. And I mean, come on. So we'll combine these, we'll blend these together. And we have, well, this could also be a shopping bag, now that I think about it. And then to add the lock part, to make it very clear, we'll combine these. I will want to move this down. Whoops. Yeah, what's happening? Let's actually copy this transform, since this is already moving something down. And yeah, so when we blend these together, we'll have a padlock. Of course, it's crazy large. Oops. You know, but we can also do this and move it down, right, and scale it in. So now we have a lock. So we've made the lock icon two different ways, and we can obviously cheat and blend this onto that, and also have a lock for our other thing. So that's fun. Yeah, so let's move on to the next symbol. So for the next icon, I will actually create it from scratch, but it's pretty easy. So we're going to create that shield symbol, and we're going to start with the curve node. And the cool thing about these, if I can click it, double click, is that you can create a shape in here and you can use it to create a mask. So I'll create a really bad version of what I'm talking about. And if we use the cross section node, you'll see, I don't know why the curve starts at L8, 8-bit basically. Don't get it. So let's change that to 16. So we get a smoother curve. So we can actually do that. And obviously we can rotate this transformation 2D. Boom. Move it across 0.5. Sorry, 0.5. And then mirror. And we have a shield. Of course, it looks really bad. So, you know, you can adjust how it looks. And to save time, I've already done this. So here it is. If we compare the curves, you can see this one is way better. And same process, no trickery, right? Same thing. And then from here, we can actually, all I did was move it, like make it a bit smaller, and use that to cut itself so I can get a sharp stroke. The reason I did that is because I use edge detect, you'll see here that it softens the shield. And this is a problem, of course, but the solution I have here is not the best solution. It's actually much simpler than you think. If you add a blend, we can blend this and multiply, and that is going to limit the edge detect within the bounds of the original mask. So, well, the original shape. So if we edit this now, it will just create an inner stroke, so to speak. And of course, if we zoom in, this is much better than this. Sorry, this is much better than this. So this method is not the most ideal. This one is. So just wanted to update that quickly so that we have the right method going forward. So that's the shield. So for the next one, we're going to do some headphones. So I've already done what I said it would do. We have a shape, we extend it, then we extend it vertically, and we move that to the side and make it smaller and blend them. Right? That should be pretty straightforward. Good. Then we transform that and move that to the side. Now we can mirror and we have the headphones part, and you all know what comes next. Splatter circular. If we blend that, we will get headphones. Boom. That's the headphone symbol last time I checked, for many devices at least. And that was pretty easy. Pretty sweet. So let's move on to the next one. Since we're talking about headphones, let's do some media controls. So again, triangle, polygon, splatter circular, you know, the ability to adjust where the square is instead of adding a transform to a shape node. So if we combine these, I think you know what we get. We get the next icon. And if we just take this, if we take this and transform it out here, and we add that in to this, then what do we get? We get either the fast forward icon or the go to the end icon, which, wow, easy work. The splatter circular, I use this to create a record icon, and that's simply by creating what I usually do with the disk and then creating rings, right? So you can see the ring amount here is set to 3. So if I increase it, I'll get rings in the middle and offset the radius. So this is the multiplier. So when you offset it, this is how it looks by default probably. But if you offset it, you can get an inner circle. So that's how we create the media controls. I mean, obviously this is to stop. Wow, easy. So it doesn't make sense going through those. So let's move on to the next shape. Because this one is so simple, I will do it from scratch. So we'll need a shape, create a disk out of that, super small, and then a splatter circular, of course. Boom. So we'll do what we always do. Set this to a high amount, set it to disk, and then reduce the spread, bring in the scale, and bring in the radius. Now the cool thing is we can actually increase the ring amount. Whoops, sorry, let's keep that large. Increase the ring amount. And now we've just created a Wi-Fi symbol. Funny thing is we can go to the rotation and move it around any way we like. It's not quite Wi-Fi because it's a bit too circular. So let's reduce the spread. Now it's more Wi-Fi. So if we combine these, now we have a Wi-Fi symbol. And the funny thing is you can use this to create a speaker, and a speaker is just a cube and a square and a triangle. And I'll prove it to you. Let's duplicate that. We have a triangle and a rectangle, sorry. So we'll blend these together. Boom, that's the speaker icon. Guess what? Let's just take it out. We can just plug that into this and rotate this. Boom. Of course, we will probably want to move this. So transform. So move this across. Boom. Speaker symbol. The end. Of course, we can edge detect this if we wanted to. And just like that. And what have we learned? That we can change the opacity to get, let's just switch those around, to get the line going across. And now we have the volume symbol or the speaker symbol, etc. And that's pretty sweet. I forgot that we don't even need this node. We can actually do this, right? And use the splatter circular setting to offset. Oh my God, that's beautiful. So let's move on to the net symbol. All right, so the net symbol, before we do the net symbol, I did want to show you something cool. So let's copy this rectangle here. If you edge detect something twice, right? Let's do that. We have a stroke. Let's edge detect that. Obviously, you will get double edge. But the cool thing about this is you can actually blend this with the original. Or we could do it the other way. And if you multiply, or is it screen? Add our mats, either one. Now you have the ability to change the shape without stretching the stroke. So you can do this and the stroke will be the same size. This is incredibly useful. So for something like this, I can use this to create a battery symbol. So I can say, hey, let's do a circular here quickly. Square one. I can actually plug that in there and then offset this to the right and make it top. Oh, the other one. And now I've just created a battery sign. It's not perfect, I understand, but it's really easy to adjust. So I thought I would put that in there. And of course, because we have this ability to adjust, we can make this a vertical battery sign if we wanted to, right? Can bring this back in the middle and then bring this up to the top and then adjust it to suit. And we have ourselves a vertical battery. So icon. So this is really cool. You get to adjust it without changing the stroke like a transformation node would. Yeah, so let's move on. So moving on from the battery as it were, let us create a polygon and start to create the electricity sign that you would see on a battery. I don't know why I'm doing that. All right, so we have a triangle and then we'll transform this and we're gonna hold control, click and drag, and we want that like slightly pointy version. This is just the simplest way to do it. So I'll duplicate that and then do a 180. Let us combine these. You know the drill by now. Let's just do a mass and move them accordingly. So I'll bring this down and we're gonna move this one to the right a little and this one to the left a little, right? From here, we can actually skew from the center. Remember, you don't want to do that. You're gonna skew from the center. And just like that, we have the electricity sign, or one of them. So we can obviously just add our own, shape here. I'd say this is pretty good. So from here, we can take this. Let's just duplicate it to create a shorter version and thinner version of itself. This will be the top of the battery. Now let us move that into place. Let's add a transform and then combine these. Let's move this up and then combine these by subtraction. This is the thing that we want to get cut. So we'll use that in the middle and then we'll cut it with this, or subtract using that. So now we have, maybe we want to move that up a bit because it looks hilarious. But now we have a battery symbol, right? Very nice, very simple, very clean, etc., etc. And yeah, so we can move on to another symbol, one of the last ones in this video. And I just wanted to do this one because this is also a common one for UI and maps and stuff, and this is the pin. So we'll just make a somewhat small circle. And funny enough, we are going to create the droplet, right? Remember I mentioned in the other video that these are things I went over already. So feel free to watch that video and you'll have a better understanding of what I'm doing here. All right. So I'm gonna do a gradient. Let's rotate that. Good. Let's blend these. Let's multiply this. And let's do a levels. All right. So now we want to directionally warp this. I'm not sure if that's a phrase that people use, but it's a phrase I'm using now. Set this to -90 and crank this up. Doesn't really matter how hard. Let's do, yeah, let's try that. Maybe more. Let's push this. Nice. Let's crank that up actually a little more. Nice, even nicer. And then we can offset this a little so that we can get nice. So from here, we'll actually transform this since it's just a sphere, a circle, sorry. So when we blend this on top now, we'll just make this like small and remove tiling, of course. And when we blend this, we're gonna subtract. It looks hilarious. So we'll have to move this up. And what do you know? It's that pin icon. Isn't it beautiful? Some of them have a base, like a little platform thing under them. So let's create that quickly. Let's just copy this so that we have a start. Whoops. So let's shrink this in a little, bring it out a little, and then we will combine these here. So do this, for example, transform. We want to bring this down and we can actually make this a little wider. Nice. So we want to remove the area around the pin. And as we know, to do that, we need an edge detect because we need to create an area around the pin that will be taken out of the base, right? Let's invert this. Good. So now we can cut this with this. So if you subtract, we'll see we get like a piece taken out, and then it will look like, you know, what we expect it to look like. Maybe this piece is a bit big and maybe this curve is a bit crazy. So we can go back and change all these things to be a little more, oh, yeah, that looks more correct. So yeah, we just made the pin icon and that was pretty simple or easy, I would say. A bit of nodes, a few bit of nodes, but you know, I'm pretty happy with how this looks. So let's move on to the last symbol. And this one was really tricky for me. So I'm just gonna duplicate it and drop it here and we'll look at how it was done. So as of recording this, I have tried a few ways to create this icon and I still don't have it looking quite the way I want. But this is the phone call icon, obviously, as you can tell. Let's rotate it so that we can see it in its natural habitat, which I think is something like this. Yeah, so this is a bit tricky, and let me just disable tiling there. So it doesn't look perfectly like the phone call icon, and I'm still working on that one. It's not perfect, but the idea I did was I got an ellipse and then I made a smaller version of it. I extended it out downward first, just a little, and then I duplicated it and cut it from itself, right? So there's the duplicate, taper in a little, and then cut. Then this is just me using something to mask out half of it. So I chopped it in half to get that like phone call handle, that phone handle. Then I use this to slice it to get the line, and then I softened it. That's it. So I would have spent more time on this to make it, I guess, a bit more accurate to the phone call symbol, but I didn't want to get like crazy and carried away. So yeah, so that brings me to the end of the symbols. We could do symbols all day. Honestly, this video is a lot longer than I had originally planned, but I did want to get out some of the most common symbols that you will come across digitally, right? I didn't get everything, but I hope that the different techniques we used to create these symbols was of great use to you. The challenges that we overcame and figured out, I really hope that helped you approach any symbol, I guess, in your future substance graphs. So I hope this was helpful, and I really thank you for watching the whole video or a lot of the video or how much ever you watched. Doesn't matter. I hope this can be used as a place for you to come back to and, oh shoot, how do I do that? I can't remember. And you can just come here and get some ideas or remember how you made it. So that is it for this video. Make sure you like it, especially if it helped you, if it's a great resource for you to come back to. Anything, I really appreciate that. And if you would like to see what's coming next, you'll definitely want to subscribe, because I have another video planned for mechanical symbols. So gears, nuts, bolts, blah, blah, blah. So again, thank you so much. And I'll leave this on the heart, and I will say goodbye and thank you. Respect. Protect.